Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Kalki Presents My Indian Life on the BBC World Service. We're telling you stories. That's what My Indian Life is all about. Real stories from all over India. And if you like the podcast, please tell everyone. Spread the word. Thank you, and let's listen to episode 4.
When you post a photograph on social media, what sort of response do you expect? Some likes, some wows, perhaps a few heart emojis, but not this.
All the messages that I received in the first 30 minutes were threats of rape, were threats of violence, were explicit descriptions of how they feel that I should be raped.
But this is what Gurmehar Kaur got, and with that, she was thrust into the spotlight.
One day I was a college student worrying about my class assignments, what movie I was going to watch that weekend, and the next day I had all the entire country's press outside my college.
From the BBC World Service, this is My Indian Life, the podcast about what it means to be young and Indian in the 21st century. I'm Kalki Kekla. This series of podcasts tells stories about some incredible people who persevere despite all odds. This is episode 4, Peace and Protest. Please remember to let me know what you think of the podcast. Leave comments or ratings if there's a way of doing that, wherever you found us. We are at BBC World Service on Twitter. Use the hashtag MyIndianLife or go to the BBC World Service Facebook page. We want everyone to know about My Indian Life. Today's episode is about a peace activist who's been at the center of a bitter and polarizing debate on nationalism and dissent. Central to this story is the loss of a parent early in life and the struggle to come to terms with that.
I was 3 years old when I lost him. I understood that my father died, I just never understood what death was.
Gurmehar Kaur is a 21-year-old Delhi University student who has been called a champion of free speech. She's featured on the Time magazine list of Next Generation Leaders for 2017, and one newspaper has called her the girl who kicked the hornet's nest, comparing her to Lisbeth Salander, the unconventional hero of a hit series of Scandinavian crime thrillers. Her critics have called her naive and misguided, and much, much worse. Here's how events unfolded. In February last year, the ABVP, which is a right-wing student organization affiliated to Bharatiya Janata Party, forced Ramjas College to cancel a literary seminar at which Umar Khalid was due to speak. Umar Khalid, a student of Delhi's JNU University, has openly spoken about his support for those who want an independent Kashmir. ABVP has called him anti-India and anti-national. As you probably know, Kashmir is disputed territory between India and Pakistan, and the neighbors have fought 2 wars and a limited conflict in Kargil over the region. Since the late 1980s, Kashmir has been in the grip of a violent insurgency, and many Indians believe that it is encouraged and supported by Pakistan, something that Pakistan denies. The next day, 2 left-wing student groups protested against the ABVP at the college. Violent clashes broke out between the 2 sides. Many students, teachers, and journalists covering the protests were injured. Both sides blamed each other for starting the violence. We'll hear from an ABVP spokeswoman in a bit, but first, Gurmehar's account. She says she's an independent activist and not part of any political group, but she regularly participates in anti-ABVP protests. On that day, Gurmehar said that she and her friend Urvi Singh had skipped the meeting because she had other things on her mind.
I turned my phone on and I connect to the Wi-Fi of my house, and I get all these images of violence on my WhatsApp group, my WhatsApp class group from the friends. And it just hits me that this actually happened. These are my friends who 3 hours ago asked me if I wanted to come for the same protest, where one of them was pulled by the hair and the other had a lathi on her arm, and it's all blue. And it was all these images of violence at once. And I think sometimes it was this survivor's guilt, because I could have gone there. I'd spoken up for Indo-Pak peace, I'd gone to other protests, and I'd been a part of these organizations before. And it just hit me that this one time, how can I not speak up? I've been trying to be there for all these other people. How am I going to be there for my own friends, for women or for girls that I see around in college every day? And I had to do something.
Gurmehar and Urvi lived in a hostel a couple of minutes' walk from their Lady Shri Ram College. They are now roommates, but at the time of the protests, they were living in different rooms.
This used to be my room. Please come in. It's a pretty tiny room. This is where I used to sleep, and this is where Gurmehar used to spend majority of her time in.
Most of my time, except for when I had to go to bed to sleep. Then I would go to my bed.
Yeah.
Gurmehar and Urvi describe the changes in the room the new residents have made.
Right now, there's a wallpaper.
Yeah.
But I remember there not being a wallpaper at all. It was just a plain wall.
Just 4 plain walls. And this one used to be covered with posters that the new residents have changed.
After getting news of the Ramjas violence, they sat in Urvi's room, did a brainstorm and came up with a plan. Gurmehar would hold a placard with a message. Urvi would take a photograph of it and post it on Facebook. When we visit a year later, there are other students living in the room. But for Gurmehar and Urvi, memories came flooding back to them. Urvi points out what used to be her table. Gurmehar, she says, first typed out the message on her phone.
Gurmehar's writing is, of course, not that nice and legible, so I decided I'll write it. And I took her phone and I wrote down the message on a placard with my felt tip pens. And then we decided we'll take a picture of Gurmehar with it.
But first, Gurmehar changed into a red t-shirt she borrowed from Urvi.
I was wearing a graphic t-shirt and I thought if we're really going to go for it, it's not appropriate to wear a graphic t-shirt with cartoons or graffiti on it. And we both wear a lot of black, so we did have a lot of black plain t-shirts. And I remember being like, not black, we're not mourning, we're furious, we're angry. It has to be red. And I changed the shirt, I wore her t-shirt.
Yeah.
The next question was where to take the photograph.
Since there were a lot of posters on my walls, we decided that we would take it against this white door right here.
The photo was taken on Gurmehar's phone.
I remember I was telling her, your camera isn't as good as my phone camera, so you take my phone and take the pictures.
Yeah.
So I gave her my phone. And the craziest thing about it is that we got the picture and she just took 5 quick pictures and that was it. And I remember, and I think
it was the first one.
It was just the first one. The very first picture that we took was
one
it.
we finalized on.
And we take a lot of each other's pictures, and Urvi knows for a fact that we take
a lot of retakes.
60 pictures to get one picture right. But I think at that moment, something very significant, just the fact that your face showed the emotions, what you had to, it was just one take and it was there. I remember looking at my face in the picture, I was like, God, I'm really furious, but this works. This is what we want to do. We're not afraid and we're angry, and this is the picture that's going on.
Gurmehar and Urvi say they can't remember what they wrote on the placard. But that photograph is everywhere on the internet, so I know what's on it. It said, I am a student from Delhi University. I am not afraid of ABVP. I am not alone. Once the photograph was posted on Facebook, it went viral and students across college campuses began sharing it. But then trolls began attacking her viciously on social media. They dug out an earlier photograph where Gurmehar was seen holding a placard that said, Pakistan did not kill my dad, war killed him. She has described her father's death as the biggest loss of her life, and that has had a lasting impact on her whole life. Captain Mandeep Singh was an Indian Army officer who was killed in a militant attack in Kashmir in 1999 when she was a toddler. Gurmehar's words were seen as giving Pakistan a clean chit, and her peace talk did not go down well with the nationalists who immediately dubbed her as anti-India. BJP politicians, a Bollywood actor, and a popular cricketer joined in ridiculing her until it was pointed out that the young woman they were calling anti-national was the daughter of a martyr, a term often used to describe soldiers dying in the line of duty. Did she expect the reactions and the trolling and all of that?
Not at all. I remember the notifications on my phone blowing up. I remember my Twitter notifications on my phone were not off. I got locked out of my phone because there were so many threats that I could not swipe. I could not open my phone. I could not type in my password because the notification was coming every second. And it just blew up. When I say it blew up, it literally means I was logged out of my phone till people could stop sending me a notification and I could find time to type my password in. I could not read them because they were coming so fast. So I could never read what the whole thing was because it was just coming one after the other, one after the other. I was like locked out of my phone. But when I did open them, all the notifications that I received for all those 30 minutes continuously were all threats of violence, of rape. They were abuse. They were very sexual sentences meant to attack me. And it was disturbing to see that this is how people would react to someone wanting peaceful campuses and good relations with the neighbors.
She did get some support, as activists, journalists, and civil society members joined the debate on freedom of speech, patriotism, peace with Pakistan, and violence against women. But a week later, Gurmehar withdrew from the campaign to protest against student violence on campuses. To the critics who accused her of being weak, she said she had gone through enough. And that was all her 20-year-old self could take. Gurmehar says her activism, her aversion to war, and her campaigning for peace are all rooted in the loss of her father.
Whether it's in Kashmir, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in any other part of the world. And where I just don't want other girls to go through the kind of loss that I have been through, or to live a life where they don't come back to a normal home with two parents.
Tell me about your first memories and, the loss of your father.
I was 3 years old when I lost him. I understood that my father died. I just never understood what death was.
Yeah.
So that is something I understood over time when I realized 5 years later that, somebody dying means they're actually never coming back.
Right.
Because as a child, as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, almost till I was in first standard, I would think that maybe today is the day he's going to walk back. I know he died, but, on TV you see people coming back. There was always a little hope that he's going to come back. I remember the coffin coming in. Yeah, I remember him being there and sleeping. And I remember being on my knees and just thinking that it's so loud here. There's so many people howling around me, and yet he's sleeping. And just me wondering that if I wake him up with my touch, he's going to get up. And he's just sleeping right now. And I remember asking Mom, and I was very curious what the coffin was. I didn't understand why he's in a wooden box. So I went to my mom and I asked her, what is this? And she looks at me and she's like, it's a dream. And for the longest time in my life, I kept thinking a coffin is called a dream.
And then as you were growing up, you said that your mom really sort of kept the memory alive. What was it that she told you about your father?
She had nobody else to talk to. She would try and talk to her mother, but then her mom would start feeling for her. She would try and speak to her friends. Then there would be a sense of sympathy or suggestions or advice. Sometimes you just want to talk about a person without being labeled as somebody who needs help or advice. So I remember my mom having conversations with me. And I remember her sometimes just talking in the air and me being present in the room. I don't even think there were moments that she was talking about my father to me, but she was just talking about him, and I just happened to be in the room. So we had a lot of conversations like that.
She wrote a book last year, Small Acts of Freedom, where she talked about him extensively. Gurmehar says it's her tribute to her father and that she's been constructing the book in her mind since she was 12, because she's always felt his presence in her life.
He's just never not there. 20 years, 19 years later, he's still here. He's still as present in my life as he would have been had he been here.
Yeah.
He's still responsible for all the decisions I take. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, what do I want to do in life? What would he think about it? And and I feel like for me, that's just keeping him alive, just keeping him very relevant in my life, even after not seeing him for all these years.
She grew up hearing that he was very brave and says she wanted to be like him. She thought it would make her mom happy if she saw a watered-down version of him in her. Losing a parent is tough at any stage in life, more so when it happens in childhood, when one is unable to make sense of what really happened. Gurmehar says for many years she struggled with hate and anger towards Pakistan because on the day her father's coffin came home, she was told that he died in war and that Pakistan was responsible for it. And that led her to doing something really shocking when she was still a tiny child.
I remember being so mad. This is something that I've spoken about a lot of times, that I tried to stab a woman in a burqa because I assumed this is something that my father would want to do. Because he was fighting Pakistanis and I was just 5 years old. So in my head I was making connections that, okay, it's a burqa, it means it's Muslim.
The incident that Gurmehar talks about happened in the town of Saharanpur, in a market where you could buy kitchen utensils.
I don't know how they keep the knives now, but they would keep knives in a glass. Just there. So I was sitting there, my mother and my masi, and they were just doing their shopping. And I see this woman in a burqa in Saharanpur walking towards there in very fast connection. I was like, I have to prove myself. Like, I'm going to take this revenge. And I'm 5 years old. And then I ran to her. And then my mom picked me. And before I could really do anything or before anybody noticed, and I think of it as a 21-year-old person thinking about a 5-year-old child wanting to stab somebody, it scares me. Which is why I think over the years when I thought about this incident in particular, when I had to purposely sit down and process emotions of anger, of revenge at such early stages, I feel like I'm so glad I got to do it because I see other people struggling with it right now. Much older people wanting to hate on other communities just because they don't know any better.
To ensure that her daughter didn't grow up with that hate, Gurmehar's mother put her in meditation classes. She also made her join dance and tennis lessons so that she could vent her aggression on the court. Gurmehar was good at tennis, and before a knee injury forced her to bow out in 2015, she participated in several international tournaments held in India where she played with a lot of Pakistanis. She says that's what made her realize how much the neighbors have in common. They speak the same language, have similar culture, and eat the same food. She says it's time to move beyond conflict and hatred, have conversations, at least have conversations about conversations. Her critics, though, have no time for her pacifism. Priyanka Chopra is 25, a law student at Delhi University, and has been a member of the ABVP for the past 6 years. Sitting on the lawns of the university's arts faculty on a breezy, cool morning, she defends the ABVP for not wanting Umar Khalid to speak at the Ramjas College event. Priyanka says she has sympathy for Gurmehar, but does not agree with her.
I feel for her, I am with her because I respect her father. He was the one who laid down his life for the unity and the integrity of this country. He was the one who was there at the borders, who got killed at the line of duty like you mentioned. But she also needs to understand that as a daughter of a martyr, she has a responsibility towards the nation. She has all the freedoms to join whatever organization she wants to. But as a youth, as a student activist, I do not very much agree with her idea of associating with the organization that are always into propagating agendas that talk about breaking India.
Priyanka says Gurmehar is naive and misguided and influenced by the wrong people.
If you like Pakistan, that's very good. Applaud it. But you should not say that we will break India into pieces or there should be a referendum on Kashmir, because it hurts us. It hurts the very sentiment of the nationalism that exists in us, because there are people who are there on the border sacrificing their life every minute so that we here as students, as young people, as a country could prosper and we are safe because of them. And then there are these people, they raise slogans like this. It actually aggravates the very feeling and the idea of the nation that we hold. It breaks it. Do you think that you can tolerate anybody who talks about breaking your house into pieces? Tell me. You won't. Or anybody who comes up to you and start abusing your mother, would you do it? We are sons and daughters of this soil, this very motherland, and he's talking about breaking it into pieces. How can we tolerate that? This is no freedom of speech, I'm sorry. There are restrictions to freedom of speech as well.
Naive and innocent. These are descriptions that Gurmehar finds patronizing and unfair. She says her pacifism, her anti-war stance, is rooted in her life experiences.
War is my life. I've lived it. I have to face the reality of what happens after war. You've read about it. You've taken classes about it. And, you've read opinion pieces about it. But I've lived it. I know what war is like. I come from a space where I strongly believe that we should not have war in the world. And I don't think that's a wrong stance to have. I really do not wish war upon anybody else.
Gurmehar says that when she was 15, she thought she could fix the world. At 21, she's more realistic and doesn't have answers to questions such as how can the Kashmir issue be resolved? How can we have lasting peace between India and Pakistan? But one thing that she is certain about is that anger begets anger and hate begets hate, and that it's important to have a dialogue to move forward. By not talking about peace, she says, we are killing that option. Right now, I'm coming to you from Pondicherry. This is my home. This is where I was born, and I've got quite a few memories over here. I'm back visiting my family for a few days, and I'm looking at your emails and messages on social media. A huge thanks to everyone who's got in touch. I want to share what some of you have said after hearing Aditya, the man who struggles to speak because of his stammer but finds his voice when he sings. Bob wrote, Aditya ends life is unique as in his fighting spirit and the grit of sticking to his singing life in the midst of his stutter. I can relate to this because I too would stutter during school and college life. But when writing, the words helped me express my thoughts with my characters. I delved into poetry and later into stories. I learned to take a deep breath and exhale slowly and steadily. And now when I talk, I keep in mind that I am talking my thoughts aloud to the person and that I am in a surreal world. Twinkle says, singing to a different tune reminds me of my brother and his minor stammering which he faced when he was a child. I loved Aditya's voice and I'm so happy now everything has turned out for him. It reminds us yet again of stereotypes and prejudices we carry on with us for no reason and that it's time we shed them off. And Akshay told us that he listened to the episode 3 on his morning walk and it put a smile on his face. He said, I could relate to a story because of the physical setbacks I have in myself. The aspiration with which I chose to lead my life is no different than that of Aditya. Living life with our heads held high and wearing that broad smile on our faces are what make people like us stand apart. And Abhijit tweeted that completing sentences for people who stammer is so natural but so rude. I guess we need better counseling as kids when we make fun of others who stammer. Please do keep sending in your thoughts and stories. We're at BBC World Service on Twitter and Facebook. Our hashtag is MyIndianLife and you can email us at myindianlife@bbc.com. In the next episode, we'll hear the inspiring story of one woman's leap of faith and a nation's journey into space. I hope you're enjoying listening to My Indian Life. If you haven't already, do listen in to the first 3 episodes. And do keep telling everyone you know about this podcast. Thanks for listening.